Disclaimer: you may not agree with the opinions in this podcast. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out to us at theyoungerhalf@gmail.com. The boys from New Jersey who discuss, debate, and share insights on everything from history to politics, sports, current events, and more. Our goal is to voice our passionate and informative opinions on our current time. Follow us on Instagram at @theyoungerhalf to see more of our podcasts. Check us out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify Podcasts at The Younger Half. Let's get into it.
Mr. Brooks, a father of 4 children, was shot by an Atlanta police officer while fleeing during a struggle at the Wendy's drive-thru on Friday night, and he died at a local hospital. Rayshard Brooks had been sleeping in his car at the Wendy's drive-thru, causing cars to go around him. Cops were called to give a sobriety exam on Rayshard, who failed the test and started resisting officers who tried to arrest him. The GBI director, Vic Reynolds, said Mr. Brooks had grabbed the taser from one of the officers and appeared to point it at the officers as he fled.
The officer fired an estimated 3 shots in the back. Riders responded by burning down the Wendy's where this all occurred. In my opinion, at least, I don't see what that gets you. What does burning down a Wendy's, how does that bring justice to Rayshard Brooks?
Right.
Same with all the other things that were going on previously with the lootings during the George Floyd protests. In my opinion, that just doesn't bring that much justice. That just adds more fuel to the fire, in my opinion.
Right, but I also think that they need their voice to be heard. The news doesn't cover every peaceful protest as much as they cover looting. As I know that looting or burning isn't the right thing, obviously not, but they need the coverage and they need attention from the press to get their message across. That's what I think.
That's a good point, but there are other ways to do it. I read multiple articles, multiple protests happening in Atlanta. I just think that isn't the way to do it.
Right. So what do you think that they should do? Probably vote also, and take action against councilmen.
Yeah, there's so many other things to do.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So on June 17th, the officer that fired the rounds at Mr. Brooks was charged with felony murder and 10 other charges. Note is, just not was it justified, but was the officer in the right? What do you think, Adon?
So I think Rayshard both knew that if Mr. Brooks, if he was arrested for DWI, then he would be put back to jail. So I think that very controversial and intense moment when he resisted officers is because he realized that he didn't want to leave his family, and he obviously no one wants to go back to jail.
I agree, because
go to jail.
It is more complicated than it seems, in my opinion, at least. He was already, at least what the GBI director Vic Reynolds said, that he already grabbed the taser from an officer and pointed it at the other officer when he was running. So that's just something interesting to note, is that he was clearly already being violent and everything like that. But in my opinion, I don't think that he should have been shot. There are other ways to apprehend, somebody who's breaking the law than to shoot him. Even if he does have a taser, that a gun is way more powerful than a taser, obviously. So in my opinion,
shot. Yeah, but still, they've been taught, and in the system is really just that it's just a split-second decision, and we had a week to analyze every video, every audio, and really get into the situation, talk to multiple witnesses. This officer had, let's say, 10 seconds, 5 seconds.
I agree. That's why I said in the beginning why it's more complicated than that. I think that's actually a good point. That, we had a week to look at everything when he had 3 seconds to decide. It's life and death right there. It does seem justified in a way, but at least in my opinion, it does seem a little too extreme.
Yeah, I heard a very powerful short quote that was lawful but awful.
Right, that's true. Okay, and on to the next thing. On to President Trump. 200 of President Trump's tweets singled out protests following George Floyd's death, as President Trump takes almost no action on the situation of racism in America. So he takes to Twitter to address the nation instead of, like I just said, press conferences or a speech. In the last 15 days, one-fourth of President Trump's tweets focused on unrest, law and order, and the threat of military use against protesters, which actually, in my opinion, is the complete wrong way to handle it. That's just like adding fuel to the fire at that point. Why would you have an angry nation, like the rage-filled nation, just threaten them? I don't understand the logic to that.
Right, but what they're saying is that they sometimes the protesters get out of hand. Like I don't agree with this.
That's not
I
a
agree with you,
that's not
but
that's not a cause to bring in the military.
right, I agree
Not a
that.
terrorist group.
But I know that's what they said. They don't need to approach a bunch of peaceful protesters exercising their First Amendment, and they don't need to bring people in riot gear and like military
Well,
weapons.
well, actually, yeah, military in my opinion could be extreme, but all it takes is one person to break a window and everyone else is joining him, or one person to just charge at the officers and everyone else is following him. That's why, in my opinion, at least they're preparing for the worst.
Right. Yeah, because they always have to be on the lookout and
Right.
ready just in case.
From George Floyd's murder in police custody on May 25th until his funeral service in Houston on June 9th, President Donald Trump tweeted 769 tweets and retweets, but hasn't held a press conference or a speech to address the nation on issues.
Right. It's really mind-boggling that if all that time, all that minute, like addressing the nation from social media, well, I don't even know if I'd call it addressing the nation from social media. He could have really just eased the like a hurting nation. We need someone to bring us back together, and the last thing we need is more division.
Right, I 100% agree. While we're on the topic, what are your general opinions about President Trump?
Well, I just think that he has so many opportunities and so many certain circumstances that he could just like go like even I'll use the ramp at West Point. He was walking down a ramp and he was like trottling down or something and everyone was making fun of him. But instead of like laying it off, he had a whole like tweet about how the ramp was very slippery or something. Like he has to like let things go
How
and
do,
he really just
right.
he has to like heal a nation that's clearly divided and wounded. I also just saw that John Bolton, who the Trump administration is trying to prevent him from writing a book about Trump and the White House, said that he asked China for help in the election. He has to
So,
focus on right now and in the current moment of America and where we stand.
and on to the next topic. COVID-19 cases increases. So hospitalizations have gone way up in states that are reopening. In an Arizona hospital, there was only one ICU bed designated to COVID-19, which is, just a proof that they're all filling up because clearly there are cases. In Oregon, a church that reopened against guidelines, um, then and more than 200 people caught the coronavirus from going to church. So, Eitan, do you believe that we are reopening too early, or do you think it is the right time?
Well, I think it was the right time, but bringing up that these huge gatherings from the protesters to the rally that's happening in Tulsa and today, and well, this week, Tulsa really just skyrocketed their cases. So President Trump's rally and the protesters are really just bringing the cases higher. But we are reopening a little too early, but I still think that even though we are reopening and there are cases going higher, it could be of the large gatherings of protesters
Well,
and
well,
um
if I
yeah.
agree, but I agree that the general overhead cases, but if you look at the Oregon church, it reopened and more than 200 people caught the coronavirus. Um,
Right.
where we live in New Jersey, we're up to like phase 2, so outdoor dining, all of these things are starting to reopen. So sure, the general cases are going up, but we are reopening, even though the cases are going up from the protest.
Yeah, but there's always coronavirus is never going to be gone. So we're always, unless
I
we have a
agree.
vaccine, of course. So it's going to keep going up.
I agree, but others would say that you're just risking lives at this point. When you're opening, look at that, 200 people got coronavirus, and you're risking people's lives.
Right. But I don't know. I just think that people are just so sick of, which does not justify risking lives, but people are so sick of indoors and everything just seems to be going down.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, guys, and that was our first episode of The Younger Half. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Check us out on Instagram at The Younger Half and all of the other all the other podcasting platforms. Thanks for listening. Have a good day.